Good afternoon, or good morning, as it were, or good day, as it were, depending on where in the world you are. My name's Christian Barker. It is 4 p.m. here in sunny, sultry Singapore, and this is the near daily conversational situation that I call Banter with Barker. Thank you very much for tuning in. Today I'm having a chat with a gentleman from Australia who I met around about a year ago, name of Mark Livings. Mark is a serial entrepreneur who's been involved in several very successful startups. However, his current business, which is known as Lyre's, appears to be poised to become his most successful yet. Mark is joining us right this very moment. To him to describe a little more about exactly what he is doing. Connecting now. There he is, the man himself. Excellent beard, almost as good as my own, Mark Livings.
Almost. I'm working on developing the same salt and pepper pattern that you've somehow put there, Mr. Barker.
It's tricky. It's all about stress, which I don't imagine you've got at all in your life right now, launching a multi-billion-dollar business.
Multi-billion-dollar? Maybe
well,
year. We'll see.
Let's be ambitious.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Indeed. No, last year I traveled 230 days of the year. So
wow.
That was a crazy, crazy period of my life, getting this thing up and running and off the ground. So yes, I know all about stress.
Yes. Well, it must be kind of have been a nice break to have been forced to have spent the last few months at home, I guess.
Absolutely. So I've only just gotten back to Europe. I'm saying hello to you from Belgium today, which is
wow, okay.
Beautiful. I'll give you a little look outside, just in a beautiful little country cottage here.
Amazing, very green, very beautiful.
Yeah,
Belgique. Are you enjoying the Belgian chips with the mayonnaise? And I don't know. I don't know much more about Belgium.
Yes.
Techno music.
All very low-fat food, which is great. But no, lots of cyclists wearing, Lycra on the roads, chewing on their handlebar tape into the headwind. But no, it's absolutely beautiful down here. And it's good to be back in Europe, to tell you the truth. I was stuck in Australia for around 3.5, 4 months. I'm not sure if you or your listeners are aware, but the government, it's one of the only developed countries in the world not allowing its citizens to leave. So yeah, managed to get a pass as an exporter and race back to Europe, because this is where our new frontier for the brand is. So it's good to have boots on the ground.
Well, let's discuss a little bit about Lyre's and what it's all about. I'm currently demonstrating the Lyre's non-alcoholic Negroni. Negronis seem to be very much the thing now. It's sort of like the new Cosmopolitan for the man. Which
I don't think there ever was a Cosmopolitan for men, Christian. Maybe in your world.
I don't know. But look, looks like a Cosmopolitan, smells like a Negroni, tastes like a Negroni. No, we don't want to make a. Well, look, you could make a fake Cosmo if you really wanted to.
Absolutely,
you could.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so. Tell us a little bit about Lyre's and what it's all about, what your inspiration was, and where you're headed with this new business.
Sure. So I guess a mission, because every company needs a mission. We're changing the way the world drinks, and for us, there's everyone wants that Leonardo DiCaprio in The Great Gatsby moment, that holding the martini across the room, making eye contact with your new guest, and having that quiet one-on-one moment. But what we realized, and I guess why the business was born, is people still wanted those beautiful, sophisticated, elegant moments without the alcohol. And what was on the market at the time when we first started the project simply didn't foot the bill. I can't possibly imagine Leo holding a Diet Coke and doing the same thing. That moment definitely requires a dry martini, and we're happy that we can provide it in a non-alcoholic format. So yeah, the inspiration, look, if you look at all the developed markets in the world, above legal drinking age, 1 in 4 people simply don't touch alcohol. And about 2/3 of people, the ones that do, when they do drink, they only have 1 or 2. So for us, there's an enormous potential to bring people into a sophisticated beverage like a cocktail or a mixed drink. And there's an enormous potential also to get people to enjoy that third drink, or to potentially have an on-ramp to their glass of wine with dinner with something sophisticated like your Negroni that you're holding there at the moment.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're seeing some sort of demographic shifts, aren't we? Where I think particularly in the younger consumer is just moving away from alcohol altogether. Is that correct? Is that what your research is sort of showing?
Yeah, look, I guess you can break the market down into 3 chunks. So, younger people or millennials, our generation, Christian, Gen X and Gen Y, and then the boomers. The boomers are easy. They're leaving the category for health and longevity reasons. They, as a generation, really perfected destroying their liver over the course of a lifetime.
Good on them. Well done, boomers. Leaving it to us to pay for your medical care. Thanks, guys.
Nice. Good job. Good. You're not the largest population bubble either. That's going to be inexpensive.
Yeah.
So that's why boomers are dropping out, or at least reducing. And then, of course, our generation, what's really funny, people think we're reducing alcohol consumption in a slow gradation downwards. We're not. We're drinking as much as we always did. But then what we're doing is we're taking 1 or 2 months off. So we're changing the way we exercise and how we move our bodies. So we'll do an F45 or an Orange Theory or a Bikram Yoga beach body challenge, and we'll drop out of the alcohol category for 8 weeks. And if we do a dry July or an October or a dry January or a Feb fast, or insert month here of your choice, before you know it, alcohol has dropped out of 30% of your yearly consumption. So that's a pretty incredible statistic there. But the most amazing of all is the one you touched on first, is that young people are simply not coming into the category with the numbers or with the weight of consumption that our generation did, and certainly the generation before ours did. So it's a huge challenge for global beverage industries to adapt their product offering. And, beer has sort of been the ones to lead the way. I guess the most iconic of which is the Heineken 0.0 product.
Yeah.
The CFO made some comments about a month ago to shareholders that it was their most successful product launch in the last 20 years.
Amazing.
But there's still major problems to be addressed. The wine industry, as much as we love a beautiful white Burgundy or a Barolo from Italy, the wine industry is having an enormous difficulty recruiting younger people to come into the wine category. And spirits is no different. So for us, it's brilliant that we can give people all that elegance, the complexity of a serve, and then, going out for a cocktail or a mixed beverage, that's not something most people can do in their home. And I know, having known you for a while now, Christian, you do make a mean martini at home most evenings.
I like to.
Yes. But there's something really special. There's the theatre, the pageantry of going out to a beautiful bar that's got a sophisticated, architecturally designed environment, having some witty repartee with wonderful people, and having a beverage that you possibly could not create in the home that's truly special. And there's a reason we call them mixologists, or sometimes liquid chefs, or the nerdier ones call themselves level 7 drink wizards. But yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they do. They do.
Really? Okay.
Really, they do. Thank Game of Thrones for normalizing nerd culture in drinking. So there you go.
I think my grandmother would have said that they have tickets upon themselves for describing themselves in such a manner. But no, but
my grandmother would have said they have feathers sticking out of their backside.
that would be another way, of saying much the same thing. We have colourful language in Australia, don't we? Now, and you've worked with a lot of these guys in really perfecting the formula, I believe, for all of these. I've got one here, the London Spirit, which is kind of your gin substitute, and I think what you've done quite differently is, rather than a lot of the other non-alcoholic beverages that are out there are trying to sort of be their own sort of unique elixir, whereas you've very much gone out there to kind of replicate, whether it's gin, whiskey, bourbon, Campari, or you know, orange spirits, whatever you want to call them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So why did you choose that approach rather than just doing, you know, one thing of your own? And how did the R&D sort of process go? And, you know, how I believe it took quite a number of years to get all of these formula right.
Yeah. Over 3 years, in fact. So lots of questions there. Let me unpack them slowly.
Okay.
So why did we decide to pay homage to classic spirits? For us, we wanted to create, we know people that love what they love to drink. You martini drinker, Negroni drinker, etc. You're familiar with that taste. You adore it. It's part of your ritual that demarcates the end of your day and the working life. Your writing probably stops and then your social life begins. And there's that lovely threshold moment that beverage might be a part of. So we know that those existing flavors are, one, important to people because they're some of their favorite flavors already that their palate has adopted to. But two, and more importantly, these are some of the most universally adored flavors on the planet. They've stood the test of time for centuries. And for us, we thought that, you know, instead of me presenting the Mark Livings recipes to the world, well, what we're also seeing is the providential recipes, where saying, I'm in this part of the world, these are the ingredients that I find around myself, and therefore here's something expressive of this area. We thought it would be a far more compelling brand and a far more compelling product to give people an alternative that they could slide in a frictionless way from the product that they already know and love into a non-alcoholic version of it. Yep. And it was really important for us to deliver something that performed exactly the same way and that they could dose in exactly the same quantity. So what we wanted, our high watermark for the brand, was let's make something that people can do and undertake the behaviors that they already know, whether they're a highly sophisticated and well-trained mixologist, all the way to someone mixing a bourbon and Coke at home at a barbecue. Yeah. All they need to do is reach for a different bottle to get the same flavor experience, but simply sans alcohol. So that was our high watermark. And we launched with a range of 12 spirits. There's now 13. And people in the industry have told us that we've been absolutely mad to do so. But for us, the vision was to recreate that back bar and give the mixologists of the world the ability to recreate their cocktail lists in a non-alcoholic format. So I know you're in Singapore. I know some of our guys were in Atlas Bar earlier in the week, and they have some extraordinary signature cocktails there. So the possibilities for them are they could recreate their signatures in non-alcoholic format, or they could use our range to recreate something or create something entirely new to begin with. So that's why we undertook the challenge to recreate the world's most loved spirits. And with that range, we can recreate 42 of the world's top 50 consumed cocktails. So pretty crazy feat that we're very, very proud of. So that's the first part of your question. And then how did we do it? And that was an exercise in madness to begin with. So I guess most of the products on the market in this category, certainly the guys that got to market first. And it was an interesting thing. We began this project before we had awareness of any competitors in this space. But, you know, we wanted to make sure that we hit that perfect frictionless moment to slide between before we launched. So we started to see the category move and develop before we managed to get our products to market because we're still perfecting them. But one of the interesting things is most of the products on market are a gin or a gin adjacent product. So a highly botanical or a expressive product. And the reason for that is they're typically distilled in a traditional fashion. So you make a gin, which is one of the most inexpensive spirits to make because you don't need to barrel age it and you can typically acquire the ingredients and so on. And then you de-alcoholize it. So there's three methods you can do. One involves, you know, evaporating the alcohol, which has a lower boiling temperature than water. The second is using a process called reverse osmosis. And the third is using a pneumatic ram to push alcohol out through a membrane. But what's the problem with that process is because, you know, ethanol is such a powerful solvent that when you remove it, you also remove a lot of the flavor that it's managed to capture as part of the distillation process.
Okay.
So you end up with an insipid, watery beverage at the end of it, which sort of demarcates the first movers in the category from I guess, our brand and people that are pursuing flavors in a similar fashion.
So let me get this right, Mark. You describe all of your competitors as making insipid, watery drinks, which are just not worth anyone's time in bothering with.
Well, for the most part, but that's
I'm kidding. Of course, I'll say that. You can't say that, but
they do require a pretty significant lick of liquid into a tonic, for example, to get some cut through. So, look, the competitors out there. They're beautiful, elegant beverages, but they do lack that firepower that a different method of production sort of affords us. The other method is, of course, steam distillation, where you pump water vapor through it. But without ethanol and without the powerful solubility of ethanol, it doesn't do a very good job at grabbing those botanicals and flavors into a beverage on the way through. Right. So we threw the rule book out and we said, you know what, distillation's great. It's romantic, but it's ineffective. So let's turn to our friends in food science and let's ask them how they would recreate a bourbon at the molecular level. And there's a really interesting business in San Francisco at the moment, of course, the home of technology, and they're recreating alcoholic spirits in a similar way to how we create non-alcoholic spirits. So they're identifying the compounds and the molecules that go into a scotch. And what they're doing is they're making an aged scotch in the space of a day by identifying some of those molecules and blending it into an ethanol base. So it's super interesting stuff because at the end of the day, whilst barrel aging is a super complicated process, you can go and isolate those compounds. And if you blend them into the base in the same way, in theory, you can get a virtually indistinguishable liquid from an aged scotch. So for us, we pursued something different. We looked at a bourbon, for example, and said, right, what's going on at the molecular level? How do we acquire those molecules? And then we put some walls on our science and said, let's make sure we acquire those molecules in an all-natural fashion. So across the range, all of the flavors are completely naturally derived. But we blend them into a natural base. And it was an extraordinary journey taking, you know, like we mentioned earlier, over 3 years. But our ingredients have 39 different countries of origin. And in order to build it, we referenced a library of over 12,000 natural essences, extracts and distillates in order to build out the range. So some of them are incredibly complex. So our Rosso Vermouth, which is our most awarded in the range, it's called our Aperitif Rosso. That's been awarded a double gold. Thank you, sir.
There we are.
That one was awarded a double gold in a blind taste at SomCon in the United States, where we put it up against its alcoholic counterparts and it walked away with a double gold medal. And
amazing. Wow.
The panel was 12 master sommeliers and 2 industry journalists. And for it to still score so highly as a non-alcoholic product was a real sort of touchstone moment for us, where we said, actually, our method of production and the science behind our product can deliver compelling beverages that can actually take people who are supposed to know the difference for a living. And we've delivered it to such a high standard that it's blended in amongst its alcoholic counterparts, and it's still picking up awards. So, yeah.
I think when congratulations on that. It's amazing. But I think when we spoke a while ago, you were telling me that some people are kind of fooled to the extent, and with the placebo effect, that they start to act a little bit tipsy if they haven't been informed that what they're drinking is, in fact, completely non-intoxicating, non-alcoholic.
Absolutely. And look, I'd love to go and borrow an fMRI machine and plug someone in and give them Lyre for the first time if they're familiar with alcohol. But what we theorize is going on is we're recreating almost everything about that experience. A sophisticated serve in a beautiful glass, the smell of the product as it wafts up from the surface of the liquid, the taste on the palate, and more often than not, it's in a beautiful bar environment. So we're ticking off every single sense that you're familiar with other than the psychoactive effect of ethanol. And the brain's really good at going, hang on a second, I know what's going on here. I'm going to get the party started without you. So I'm sure it's dumping endorphins and dopamine and other amazing chemicals that alcohol will often precipitate in our endocrine systems. It's just doing that because it's going, I think what's going on here is what I'm used to having go on here. So that placebo effect is hilarious when we're demonstrating it to people that don't know it's non-alcoholic and haven't tried it for the first time. So yeah, it's a pretty fun thing.
It's interesting. I had something similar recently with, you were mentioning the Heineken, the 0% Heineken, which actually my wife bought for me, going, oh, that looks like a good price on Heineken. I'm going to buy a 6-pack of this, and got it home. And I said, darling, that's not going to do the trick for me. But thank you. Thanks for thinking of me.
I've heard that story countless times.
But it was a great price. So, and bless her. But yeah, I did get through that 6-pack. It took me about 6 months, but it eventually happened. And I remember, a couple of them that I had with my lunch, there was just a little bit of a trigger going on in my head. That was kind of like, or an hour later, I started feeling a little bit drowsy, and I was thinking, that's not right. So yeah, I guess we're easily tricked.
The brain's a wonderful thing.
It's true, and you've gone into a lot of trouble with the packaging to create packaging that is, as you say, that will look the part behind the bar, alongside all of the traditional proper boozy products. Can you explain a little bit about the thinking and philosophy behind the marketing, the packaging? There are lots of different routes that, you can buy whiskey that looks like it's space age, and you can buy whiskey that looks like it's space side. Why have you chosen to go for, the particular brand identity that you have?
For sure. So I guess that's part of my background. Is I've had a marketing agency, which is how I came to know you, Christian. Our great friend Bree Mankin is a mutual friend. Of course, she's the managing director of the agency and introduced us. That agency, the Kinetic Agency in Sydney, helped craft this brand. But I guess coming back to core principles, we wanted to make sure it looked like that it was part of the bar. So we wanted them to sit alongside their alcoholic brethren, and simply sit there. Because one of the things for us that we found out very, very early on is there's a sense of anxiety amongst consumers when they're ordering a non-alcoholic product. And for us, it's most salient when someone has an artifact in their hand, a physical artifact that says to everyone else in the room, be it a bar or a party or a backyard barbecue, like, I'm not part of the tribe. I'm not part of what's going on here, and here's an artifact to prove it. So for us, we can deliver a beverage that looks, smells, tastes the same and delivers that alcohol placebo, as we've just unpacked then. But the product itself, we wanted to make sure it could fit into the bar environment, that people would be proud to have them on display in their home liquor cabinets, or the bars would be happy to have behind the bar. And if someone was ordering a non-alcoholic beverage, it looked, for all intents and purposes, like an alcoholic cocktail was being made for them. So we borrowed very, very heavily from the world of spirits. So we've used a traditional spirits bottle here. But at the top here is our little lyre bird. And there he is. So the lyrebird's part of the peacock family. So beautiful tail plumage. It is an Australian bird, and it is unique to the avian world in that what it can do is it can recreate the bird song of any other bird that it hears. So it's considered nature's greatest mimic. So if you're interested, have a look at the David Attenborough video. It's available on YouTube, where the lyrebird is replicating the sound of not only other species of bird in its immediate surroundings, but it's also replicating human noises, chainsaws, mobile phone rings, car alarms, camera shutters that it can hear. So it's an extraordinary creature. So one, being an Australian and as an Australian founder, two, having a uniquely Australian bird, and three, being nature's greatest mimic, we thought it was a beautiful moniker to have as our headline for our brand. So it came together nicely. So that's the lyrebird there. And then we, of course, have our animals on the bottles. I've only got two here with me today. So this is our dark cane spirit. So that is a Caribbean parrot. And I've got our white cane spirit, which is our homage to white rum. And there's our Caribbean monkey. But the entire range, there's a different animal across the labeling. And for all of them, the animals are evocative of the providence of the original spirit. So the rums, we've paid homage to the Caribbean. For the bourbon, we have a North American black bear paying homage to, of course, North America. And the dry London spirit that you have in front of you there, that's a London pigeon. So with apologies to our British friends, that's the most iconic animal that we could think of.
It's the most glamorous creature they have in the whole of the United Kingdom is the flying rat that is otherwise a pigeon.
Yeah. The bin chicken. Well done, guys. So
apologies to our English friends.
Yes. And then last of all is the name of the brand itself. And of course, we've shortened the word lyrebird to Lyres. And two things. One, it pays homage to the lyrebird, but two, it's a wonderful bar call. It's a cheeky little phonetic device that allows people, if they love our brand, to ask for a drink they love, like the Negroni that you're enjoying, to go to the bar and say, "Sir, madam, may I have a Negroni, but make it a Lyre's." So for us, we wanted that ability to have that cheeky moment with the bartender where only you and they know that you're ordering a non-alcoholic version of your favorite cocktail.
Exactly. And I think the other thing is we've been seeing for quite some time a move towards more low alcohol cocktails rather than the martini, aka the silver bullet, which will slay you after one or two of them. A move towards cocktails that are possibly around 15% alcohol or even lower. And it's something that I've kind of tried as well, in that, for a drink like this, the Negroni, instead of having actual vermouth, actual gin, and actual Campari or whatever, you could swap out one or two or, as many of those ingredients as you wish and make something that, if I was to only use actual vermouth in here and use Lyre's London Dry Spirit and Lyre's orange bitter spirit, then that's going to make it a very mild, very, very mild drink, but that's still got a little bit of how's your father to it.
Little giggle juice, we like to call it.
Exactly.
So the I guess the no alcohol and the low alcohol trend are going hand in hand. So sometimes people want elimination of alcohol entirely. Sometimes people, they do want to limit their alcohol because they're either driving or they've attempting to meet a number of units during the week. There's a number of reasons people are electing to go low alcohol. In your example, you may have a favorite gin that I know you love the Martin Miller, is that right?
Martin Miller's, that's an excellent memory. I'm going hard on the Japanese Roku gin at the moment. That's my kind of flavor of the month. But the Martin Miller's is a big favorite, absolutely.
Yeah, hats off to our friends at Suntory for that one. They've nailed that. It's an awesome gin. But the Martin Millers, you might say, I want those lovely notes of aniseed and the crisp Scandinavian waters in my Negroni. So you might go for that and then substitute our Italian orange, which is our homage to Campari, and our Aperitif Rosso, which is our homage to sweet vermouth. And all of a sudden you have a one standard drink Negroni rather than the crimson super weapon that a full strength Negroni can be.
You'd never know that you come from a marketing background, Mark, with these descriptions such as the crimson super weapon. I don't know. That's a beautiful, beautiful thing. obviously, we're viewing everything at the moment through the lens of what the world has been going through for the last kind of few months, and being whether that's just the crisis in general, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of nervousness, obviously, huge human tragedy that's happening in the world, but also a great deal of economic uncertainty, and most sort of prognostications saying that we're headed for nasty times economically. How has this, just the general mood and the general situation of this crisis for the last few months, how has this affected your new business and launching Lyres onto the market? And I find that personally, I've been wanting to drink away my sorrows as much as possible, and I'm probably looking for something a little bit more, Admiralty sort of Navy strength rather than no strength. But how are you finding that the mood and the current situation is affecting business or the rollout?
Yeah. Look, really interesting questions, and Harvard in their MBA course certainly doesn't offer the subject, being a CEO in the time of a global pandemic. There's no rule book here. So I think very generally, before we get into Lyres, the business has had to be extraordinarily adaptive, and we executed a pretty amazing pivot, and I'm super proud of my team for doing so. But as you would probably expect, one of the channels that really benefited from the lockdown and the pandemic was the direct-to-consumer channel. And, we're starting to see data come out now around, just how fast the growth has been. And I think I recall seeing a Citigroup report that showed that the e-commerce channel had moved 5 years ahead in terms of penetration in the space of 2 months. So, e-commerce for us, we very fortunately, somewhat presciently, invested very, very hard ahead of the curve in our e-commerce capabilities. So we have a multi-currency cross-border fulfillment capability, so we can tap into emergent markets and really penetrate new markets very, very quickly with our tech stack and our fulfillment network that we had already built pre-COVID. And COVID for us, and it sounds absurd, but the economic, punishment, and it's made it extraordinarily difficult as a startup to execute the usual fundraising for a business. Venture funds have snapped their purses closed and taken the coins back off the children and popped them back into the treasury. So, it's a little lumpy. So, fundraising's been a little more difficult than what it otherwise would be for a startup. But the e-commerce on the sales side of things was explosive. And from the first week of March through to mid-May, we saw triple-digit week-on-week growth in our range online. And clearly, there's 4 channels: travel retail, the on-trade or bars, the off-trade or supermarkets and liquor stores, and e-commerce. The first 2 were decimated. Travel retail, non-existent. The on-trade was completely locked down. But the off-trade had a small bump. E-commerce had an enormous explosion. So we were very, very lucky. And it went from, as a share of our revenue mix, around 40% of our volume was direct to consumer. And in April, it was above 90%, to give it some context. And it seems to have settled down now around 60%. So, that's the sort of 30,000-foot view of the macro environment and what's happened in terms of our channel mix. But the other part of your question is, what are consumers doing during lockdown? And we think, and again, this is intuition, the marketing industry will truly understand what consumers did and how they behaved. But we put it into 2 categories. People decided to get piss fit or prison fit. So for a lot of people, they saw it as an opportunity to work out every day, change their diet, make more meals at home, remove alcohol because they're not entertaining in a corporate context, and there's no more Friday night drinks and the like. And other people thought this reality was so horrible, we need to escape from it. And I had a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B during the lockdown. So I can empathize with both of our sort of extremes here, where we think people have fallen into. But I think what we're seeing now, Christian, is, after that initial, I need that psychoactive substance to change my reality and take in stride what is going on in my life. As a species, we're incredibly adaptive. And I think, a lot of people are coming off that, and there's an off-ramp now. But what's really interesting for us is it's fueled a boom, and it's fueled a curiosity in in-home cocktail making. So for us, we're sort of sitting there at this beautiful juncture of people still wanting to have that moment in their home at the end of a day or on the weekend, but they're choosing to reduce or remove the alcohol from their life. So it's really, really benefited the brand on the way through. So we've been extraordinarily happy with how the consumer has adapted during COVID, but it's certainly presented some extraordinary challenges from running a business during the COVID period as well.
Yeah, well, I hadn't thought about the people who are getting prison fit, and if I was in prison, I'd be making booze in the toilet in the lavatory, out of fermented orange juice or whatever. No, but that makes a lot of sense, and yeah, we've seen a lot of people kind of doing a lot more exercise than they would have otherwise, because it's one of the only things that you're allowed out of the house to do. Yeah. So people are getting out and doing that, which kind of brings me to the topic of, for those who are health conscious, what is the, people keep telling me that all of the martinis that I drink, each one's got as many calories as a slice of pizza. I find this very hard to believe, and I think it's lies entirely. But how many sort of calories are we looking at in for instance, what I'm drinking as compared to the alcoholic variety? Is it less? Yeah. Is it on the par?
So yeah, a martini, and I terrified a friend of mine, and I think I can see that she's tuned in and she's watching. I terrified a friend of mine when I reminded her that her martini has the same amount of calories as a Mars bar or a candy bar, for those who aren't familiar with Mars bars.
Much more pleasurable though, much more pleasurable.
Yeah. Absolutely. But most of the caloric content in a spirit is the ethanol. So you think about how a spirit is made. It's often a sugar base. So be it sugar cane, be it barley sugar that's been extracted through milling and then soaking, and all of the dextrose comes out of the barley. Or if you're making a fruit-based spirit, it's all the fructose that's come out of whatever the source of the fruit is. So you've got this incredibly carbon or sugar-rich base. And then the yeast comes along and eats it, and it poops out the alcohol, and it poops out a whole bunch of really interesting stuff like fruity esters and polyphenols that make, alcohol delicious. But it's simply converting that sugar to a different form. Those calories aren't going away. They're just in a different form. So alcohol is one of the most calorie-dense substances we put into our bodies. There's a reason it catches on fire when you put a naked flame to it, and a broccoli doesn't. So, so when you remove that from a spirit, a 40% ABV spirit like a bourbon or a rum or a gin, you're removing up to 95% of the calories. So our range is extraordinarily low calorie.
Right.
And we've just struck a wonderful relationship with Weight Watchers globally. So you'll see Weight Watchers advocating for people, if they still want those sophisticated serves as part of their, their day-to-day life, that Lyre is a great alternative to consuming alcohol and taking all those calories in. So across the range, it sits at between sort of 75% less calories than the alcoholic original. And in the case of the gin, over 95% less calories than the alcohol-containing original.
That is significant. Okay, something to be conscious of for my more fitness-focused friends who are Ironmen and so forth. Whereas I am more of
a Hemingway-esque write drunk, edit sober
adventurer. Yes, a gentleman adventurer. Yeah. One of my friends, Stefano, who I was just chatting with yesterday, is asking, is there any competition in your market? And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's really anyone who's doing exactly what you guys are doing Are they? Or
Not really, no. So I guess like any category in a consumer good, there's four stratas, right? So there's craft, there's premium, there's mainstream, and there's value. And it applies to, tampons, chocolate bars, as well as the non-alcoholic spirits category. So to answer your question, or sorry, your listener's question, the vast majority of competitors are sitting in that craft strata where they're small volume, they're typically made locally and sold only into their local geographies or a local catchment area. There's a couple of brands that are owned by global multinational spirits companies, but there's no one on the market with the breadth of flavors that Lyre's offers, and there's no one on the market with the geographic footprint that Lyre's have. So we're now the most widely distributed non-alcoholic spirit in the world. We believe that we're the largest selling. We can't get the data to justify that. But what's going to be really great is this category continues to grow. Having Lyre's there is, I guess, one of those capstone brands that really help create the category and deliver it is a truly special thing for myself and the team. So, yeah, long way of answering a question, sorry, but there are competitors out there. I'd encourage you to try them because we need this category to be a success, and Lyre's is a big part of that category.
yeah, look, but the thing I find a little bit hard to fathom is when I will see a bottle of, you don't want to mention it, but seed lip in my local grocery store, which is sitting above with a bottle of Martin Miller's gin next to it, and the two things cost the same price.
Yeah,
exactly the same price for a non-alcoholic to an alcoholic, which to an alcoholic is makes no sense. But there we go. I find that hard to fathom. That it's kind of like, I don't know. Chewing gum and nicotine chewing gum costing the same thing. How can this be? One of them.
I've never heard that analog before, but that's extraordinary. I'm going to steal that one, Christian. Look, we do hear that a lot. We don't hear that from consumers much. People simply want what they want. And we do hear it from people who are familiar with how the alcohol industry works. So typically people in the trade, or what we think is going on is there's a conflation of alcohol content and value. And that's held by some people, but not all people. A really useful analog to understand this is, are you familiar with the Impossible Burger, for example?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So, absolutely brilliant product. Food science, much like we're food science in beverage, they're food science in plant-based meat alternatives. You go into a burger joint in the countries that it's distributed in, and if you want an Impossible Burger patty, you're paying typically $1 more. So
yeah, I find that a different thing, though. I think that's, maybe you're willing to pay a premium to know that no creature died to provide your meal, which I find a compelling proposition. So yeah,
we also see it in the dairy category. Plant-based milks per litre are far more expensive than traditional dairy as well. So what we know is there's a willingness for people to, if they can find something that's close to what they love, and they can have a healthier, more mindful, or a perceived healthier or more mindful consumption experience, we know they're happy to pay the same or more for that experience. So that's, I guess, what we call in economics the price elasticity thing.
Sure.
But then it comes back down to, the fact that, we're still, and everyone in this category is still a very, very small producer. We don't have the swimming pool production capabilities of a Diageo or a Pernod Ricard to make vodkas or gins by the gigaliter.
Sure. Yeah.
So we're still, we're not getting those economies of scale that those very, very high volume spirits manufacturers are getting. So naturally, for us to stay in business, that's where the price point is set. Over the years, as the non-alcoholic spirits category grows to the same level of penetration that we might start to see, that plant-based meat alternatives, the vegan diet is now 5 to 6% of people's diets in developed countries like Australia, the US, and the UK.
Yeah.
We're seeing plant-based milks. 10 years ago it was 1.5–2% of total dairy. It's now 15 or 16% of total dairy. So we're seeing this incredible disruption around mindfulness or wellness in these traditional categories. And I don't think that beer, spirits, or eventually wine is any different. So, across the course of the next decade, as this brand continues to grow and as this category continues to grow, we'll get the benefits of economies of scale, and we will be able to bring our price points down considerably as we get the benefits of those in our production.
Okay, that's great. Speaking of wine, is that an area that you're looking towards to creating something in that category as well?
Yeah, look, if you divide the alcohol category into three big buckets globally. So alcohol, $1 trillion a year, the globe's population spends on booze. Around 400 million of that is beer, around 300 million of that is wine, and around 300 million of that is spirits. So, if we can disrupt the spirits category to the same level as, say, the vegan diet has appeared, we're a $15 billion category, which is extraordinary. That means that there's another total addressable market in wine of $15 billion if you can create compelling similes or facsimiles of wine. So, of course, it's something that we're looking at. We've got the food science, but one thing I will tell you about wine is if you look at a glass of spirits and if you've got all of those molecules that deliver the bouquet or the perfume, as well as the flavor notes, our most complicated, the Rosso Vermouth, as we talked about earlier in the show here, it's 36 ingredients. For us to deliver something like a white Burgundy with the same level of complexity, we believe it's a 10 to 15 times more difficult challenge simply because of the extraordinary melange of compounds floating around in that liquid. That's it's not impossible, but it's going to take a much longer time, we believe, for wines to get as close to their original counterparts as we have done so with spirits.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, I think you've been ambitious enough already with 13 different styles of spirits to try. And the thing that strikes me is that that you do get out of the Lyre's range. I don't necessarily know how to describe it. That burn, was that a big challenge in getting that little, that afterburn, that spicy, quality that you do get from liquor in there?
For sure. Yeah, look, ethanol, or alcohol as we commonly know, but ethanol is an extraordinary substance, and it does incredible things to, us at a physiological level. So, when we put it in the palate, it's an adjutant. So all of a sudden the blood rushes to the palate and the cheeks and the tongue, and it heightens the flavor sensations.
Sure.
It's also a solvent, so it strips water from the mouth. So all of a sudden your saliva's gone, so your flavor's increased even higher. And then you've got that warmth because it's, attacking. It's a pretty powerful substance in terms of its solvency. And, we generally know that as it's the warmth. And, as you sip on a fine scotch or a cognac, it spreads down your esophagus and you have that lovely feeling. And then, of course, there's the psychoactive effects at the end of it. How the hell do you replicate that in a non-alcoholic format? And that was the challenge. So for us, we knew that having a level of agitation of the palate was really important. So we looked to natural substances that had something similar to ethanol. And we haven't got it quite the same, but it's a close enough facsimile to it that people really enjoy the spirits as they contain them. So what we've done is we've turned to our friends in the capsaicin family. So we use some chili extracts. We use peppers. We use some white pepper and black pepper. We also use some Sichuan pepper, which has some really extraordinary numbing characteristics, if you're familiar with it. And we also, in some of our variants, and we use ginger and we use menthol. And what's really interesting is from, alcoholic spirit to alcoholic spirit, ethanol manifests differently on the palate. So in the case of a triple sec, or more commonly known as a Cointreau, that's got a pretty high ABV. But as you drink it, you've got this cooling mintiness on the palate. Whereas if you go and switch into a Scotch, you've got this fiery spiciness on the palate. It's the same alcohol content, but it's to do with the adjacent ingredients around the ethanol that changes how it performs. So for Lyres, from variant to variant, we had to change our alcohol burn characteristics to suit the original. So there's no one, panacea or silver bullet to synthesize alcohol in a non-alcoholic. You have to do it variant by variant in order to create a compelling homage to the original.
You're an ambitious man, Mark Livings. It's hugely challenging project that you've attacked here. I'll just throw out now, as we've got sort of 8 minutes left in the exactly 60 minutes that our friends at Instagram, our friend Mark Zuckerberg allows us to have in his great generosity. Thanks, Mark. Love the photographs of him out surfing. I think he overdid it a little tiny bit on the zinc. Have you seen the shots?
I have. I don't know what to say.
I don't know what to say either. It's just having been quite familiar with the use of zinc in our youth, as I'm sure you were. The idea is not to look like a mime.
Yeah, I'm having a confluence of emotions about it, Christian. I'm really unsure how to feel.
We don't want to say anything bad about him. We don't want to get shadow banned by the whole Facebook conglomerate. I like using WhatsApp. I like using Instagram, and occasionally like catching up with my my mum and dad's friends on Facebook. But yeah, just wanted to say, anyone who's listening now, if anyone's got any questions, please throw those at us right now. But the last thing I wanted to ask you is, what challenges or opportunities do you think that the current situation that the world is facing? Well, I guess, what challenges are you overcoming at the moment, or have been most problematic or troublesome for you, biggest hurdles? And what do you think, as silver linings are, the best opportunities that this overwhelmingly negative situation is hopefully going to present us with?
For sure. So I think it's really important to recognize that, a global pandemic is accelerating underlying trends that were already there. So, the workplace flexibility and the ability to work from home, it's accelerated our adoption of video conferencing tools and communications tools that exist digitally. It's certainly accelerated the way we shop and interact with brands. And that trend was already there, but there's been an enormous acceleration where, as a brand, you have to be digital first, not only in how you're designing your marketing and communicating with the people that you want to sell your product to, but also how to make it available to. So it's changed the shape of how you bring a consumer brand to market, where traditionally it'd be, let's go and win a major retailer and get it on shelf, and then we'll buy some TV ads and maybe some newspaper ads on the way through. The world has so very quickly moved on from there. And what's really interesting for brands is that there's no longer major retailers disintermediating their communication. They can have meaningful, clear relationships with the people that enjoy their product, and there can be witty repartee back and forth amongst consumers and the people that manufacture these lovely brands. And for me, I guess some of the core principles of doing business in a post-pandemic world is: 1, you must be digital first. 2, you don't need a HQ. Lyre as a business, we've got over 30 employees, but not a single one of them has an office. We're all working from home, or a lot of us work from private members clubs because they're extraordinarily good value in terms of a beautiful place to work, great networking, and so on. And you can sell directly to consumers in almost any part of the world. The geography that you're in, Christian, is uniquely qualified to service an amazing amount of countries. You can position your product in the tax-free zone of Singapore, working with any one of the vendors there, and overnight you've got availability to sell into more than 130 different markets, ex-Singapore. So
Amazing. Yeah.
having line of sight to those sorts of things and building it into your business plan early rather than something that you get to later, I think that's the adoption that people need to make in these times. And we have to continue to be agile and responsive and learn how to pivot our businesses around, continual shocks. I don't think we're out of this crisis yet.
No.
One of the cities in my home country, or your home country as well, Melbourne, has just gone back into 6 weeks of lockdown, which is very sad. And hello to anyone in Melbourne, and we're thinking about you all. I know a second lockdown must be extraordinarily psychologically difficult to deal with.
Well, and also I was speaking with a guy from a clothing brand down there who was saying he knows so many businesses who had thought, okay, right, this is our time, we can invest, and whatever it is, they're a restaurant, they invest in the stock that they need and the produce that they need, or all of these businesses had invested in coming back and are taking just another real punch in the guts, as we call it in my country.
100%. But restaurants are a really great thing to look at as well. I mean, so many restaurateurs that are personal friends of mine adapted to a delivery model. Instead of people coming into the restaurant and enjoying it there, they quickly worked out how to run their own deliveries. And all of a sudden, they still had a viable business, even through a period of extraordinary impact. Yeah.
It's been tough. It has not been easy. Thank you, Nicole. Must be a friend of yours, Mark, who's made some kind comments. We've had a few nice remarks there, so thank you to everyone who has been watching and has appreciated the conversation that we've had. Are you, speaking of being kind of decentralized and taking advantage of more digital, I don't know, we're calling it digital commuting, the telecommuting or whatever, which I think is a bit of a misnomer. But is that going to reduce your ridiculous travel schedule that I know, as you said, you're on the road 230 plus days a year? Final thing to discuss. Do you think you'll be able to spend a little bit more time at home?
100%. Look, and I've just moved to Europe, so settling in to Amsterdam. So, which is awesome. But I'll be bouncing around the Schengen zone for the next 6 to 12 months, and then we'll see what the future holds from that point onwards. But that travel burden is no longer something that's necessary, but it's no longer also something that's viable. Borders are so volatile, Christian, that I think, any kind of international travel needs to be incredibly short-term in a business context. And you can't really plan for any major long global trips without expecting disruption along the way. So the landscape's certainly shifted. And it makes me very sad that I can't have banter with Barker in person for quite a while, but this has been fun.
It is a shame, but I look forward to coming and visiting you in glamorous Amsterdam and going out, riding bicycles, looking at Van Gogh paintings and all of the other cultural attractions that Amsterdam has. But yes, as Mesa Blues official there, Stefano Zamuna, who's a great designer and menswear fashion designer, he's based in Amsterdam, so I'm sure he'll drop you a message afterwards, Mark. Good man. Good man to know, and he'll be able to hook you up with some of those Lyre shirts that I know you love.
Hey, don't fight it. I am in advertising.
Look, cheers. It's been great chatting with you, and look, all the best. Thank you to everyone who joined us. The countdown is coming to an end, but now I'm going to go and make one that's got some of that Roku gin in it, and ease off into the weekend. You have a good weekend too, my friend.
Libations, Christian. Take care.
Lovely speaking with you, Mark. Take care. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.